Movies can have a lasting impression on you and bring back great memories. Certain images you will always remember. Things that have been with me all my life and keep getting added to with every movie I see.
I will turn this place into the fucking Wild Bunch if I think you are fucking with me.
E.T. from home.
This is the end of your rotten life, you motherfucking dope pusher!
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Hello and welcome to My Cellular Heart Podcast, Season 4, Episode 161. On this podcast, we normally take two movies that live in our head and heart and put them together over two episodes by one topic or theme. There will be spoilers, but today, I'm your host, Philip Duke, by the way. I'm here by myself, but today we're doing a one-off. I thought, what's a good movie to pick that I haven't seen for a while, but that stuck with me? And I'd say Boogie Nights is the one, and that's the one I chose. So, without further ado, let's get to the movie, shall we? Here's a little TV spot.
I want you to know I plan on being a star.
New Line Cinema presents
Jack Horner, filmmaker, exotic pictures.
The life of a dreamer.
These are great.
Are they lizard?
No, they're Italian.
The days of a business.
Cut. Terrific.
The award goes to Dick Diggler!
And the nights in between.
Oh, wait. Stop this part.
Official selection of the 1997 New York Film Festival. Boogie Nights. Rated R.
That's right, Boogie Nights, 1997, the plot, the life of a dreamer, the days of a business, and the nights in between. Set in 1977, back when sex was safe, pleasure was a business, and business was booming. Idealistic porn producer Jack Horner discovers Eddie Adams, a hot young talent working as a busboy in a nightclub, and welcomes him into the extended family of movie makers, misfits, and hangers-on that are always around. Adams' rise from nobody to a celebrity adult entertainer is meteoric, and soon the whole world seems to know his porn alter ego, Dirk Diggler. Now when disco and drugs are in vogue, fashion is in flux, and the party never seems to stop. Adam's dreams of turning sex into stardom are about to collide with cold, hard reality. So, this stars Mark Wahlberg as Eddie Adams / Dirk Diggler. So, the director here, PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, he wanted Leonardo DiCaprio after seeing him in The Basketball Diaries. And DiCaprio enjoyed the script, but had to turn it down because he signed on to star in Titanic, a little movie called Titanic. He recommended Mark Wahlberg for the role, who was also in Basketball Diaries, in case you guys didn't know. Joaquin Phoenix was also offered the role of Eddie, but turned it down due to the concerns about playing a porn star. Phoenix later collaborated with Anderson on the films The Master and Inherent Vice. So, that's awesome, of course. Julianne Moore as Maggie / Amber Waves. Burt Reynolds as Jack Horner. So Bill Murray, Harvey Keitel, Warren Beatty, Albert Brooks, and Sidney Pollack declined or were passed up on the role of Jack Horner. And Don Cheadle as Buck Swope. So after starring in Hard Eight, Samuel Jackson declined the role of Buck Swope. So I don't know why. He's probably busy doing a lot of stuff in the 90s. He's in every movie ever. John C. Reilly as Reed Rothschild. William H. Macy, the great William H. Macy, as Little Bill Thompson. Heather Graham as Brandy / Roller Girl. So Anderson initially did not consider Heather Graham for Roller Girl because he had never seen her do nudity in a film. However, Graham's agent called Anderson asking if she could read for the part, which she won the whole... I knew I'd fuck that up. I don't know. I knew I'd fuck it up somehow, but here we go. So she won the role, and Drew Barrymore and Tatum O'Neal were also up for the role, which would have been interesting. Like either of those girls, like Drew Barrymore, I could see her doing it. Tatum O'Neal would bring more to it, something. But Heather Graham's great in it. Whoops. And I remember first seeing Heather Graham in this, and I was like, oh my God, she's naked. The great Heather Graham is naked. Holy smoke. Philip Seymour Hoffman, the great Philip Seymour Hoffman, is Scotty J. Louis Guzman as Maurice Rodriguez / T.T. Rodriguez. Philip Baker Hall as Floyd Gondoli. Thomas Jane as Todd Parker. Alfred Molina as Rahad Jackson. And Ricky Jay as Kurt Longjohn. Ricky Jay is always great. All these people are great. This whole cast is great. And I didn't name all of them. I named most of them. Written by Paul Thomas Anderson. So he was disappointed with his first film, Hard Eight, which he did not have full creative control over. PTA turned to an earlier short film of his for inspiration, the mockumentary, The Dirk Diggler Story. So this was one where he was going to make it kind of like a This Is Spinal Tap, but he did it a little different. It's still funny, but it's not a This Is Spinal Tap type, but I think that's how a short film probably was. Made when he was a teenager, the 32-minute short tells the tale of Diggler, who was bisexual and died of an overdose in that version. Anderson also used the 1981 documentary Exhausted, John C. Holmes' The Real Story, as a creative source for Boogie Nights. So if you guys have not seen this documentary, it's fun because I hadn't seen it until I saw Boogie Nights. And then I happened to find, I think my dad had it, or maybe I rented it somewhere. But it was really cool. And it's just interesting for the John Holmes of it. And that it matches a lot of that documentary footage in Big Boogie Nights is exactly what they did in the John Holmes documentary. Pretty interesting. And if you don't know John Holmes, look him up. He had an immense penis and he was a porn star in the 70s and 80s. Anyway, in fact, PTA recreated several scenes from that doc, which I just said, for his film with the I do my own blocking and the excellent restaurant scenes as examples. It's directed by Paul Thomas Anderson as well. So this was the first film of his that I saw, and I loved it. I was like, oh my God, this is fucking amazing. Like, it's so detailed and rich and great acting and all this stuff. And then later when later I saw Hard Eight. I didn't like it as much as Boogie Nights. It's a different film, and like they said, Paul Thomas Anderson didn't have a lot of creative control on that film. And then I saw Magnolia when that came out. I was blown away by Magnolia, the way it just intersected and it all intertwined, and it worked so great. And it had these cosmic coincidence type things in there, which I love, and all the acting in there is great. So I loved all that. And then, of course, after that, saw his other films. I didn't much care for, dare I say it, There Will Be Blood. I thought it was too drama for me. I wanted something more entertaining. Then I saw The Master. I didn't much care for that. It was okay, but I didn't like it. And then I have not seen the can't even think of Thread, the Phantom Thread. I've not seen that yet. I hear that's good. And then his newest one I have not watched. I was going to watch before this, but I did not, so I'm very sorry. I did not do Recasted this week. I'm by myself. Chip's not here. Too many people to recast, so I will not be doing that. And normally here's where I ask, how did this movie come into my life? And like I said, I went to the theater and saw it and was blown away by it. It was just like, oh my God. The 90s, even though they're 90s films, like I was just watching a thing called The Last Action Hero, whatever. It's a thing about like canon films, all the stars in the 80s and 90s. And they're really 90s films. And this one is like this. Pulp Fiction came out. Boogie Nights came out. What's the other one? Goodfellas. Like all these films where you're like, holy shit. Like there's some good ones. There's some horrible ones. There's some good ones. But it was really amazing. I was just like, oh, I got to buy that when it comes out. When it came out, I bought it. It was awesome. I think I went and saw it with my friend Sean. So that was awesome. Would you like to get to some listener opinions now? Okay, let's do it.
Well, you gotta have an opinion.
Well, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one.
I hated this movie.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
I like it!
Opinions vary.
BJ B. Chillin wrote, I love this movie. 2 heart eye emojis. Second Chance Movies Pod wrote, Boogie Nights is a star, a big, bright, shining star. I said, I see what you did there. Like, bright, shining star, that's who you are. Anyway, Joseph Darlington of Being James Bond wrote, quote, always felt it was a bit meh. A few great moments, but overall just a tribute to Scorsese and other auteur directors. Goodfellas meets the porno industry, unquote. So I was like, ooh, I said, that's interesting. I'll have to really watch it. And I did notice a lot. And it kind of changed a little bit of my ratings, but we'll get to that. Anyway, Pavel.S.W.H. wrote, quote, movie is no joke. It's open up to an industry which we actually never really talk about and show its advantage and disadvantages. And we got to know Mark got a big cannon, unquote. So, yeah, in case you didn't know, I think I'll get to it at the end. But, that wasn't his real dick. But he does own that prosthetic. It's the only movie prop that he owns from any of his movies. And then our resident reviewer, Brant Dotson, friend of the show, wrote, quote, Boogie Nights is an unexpected classic. It takes a subject that is rejected by society and interjects it with so much humanity. Sure, it's about porn, but it has meaning. A masterpiece in filmmaking. 5 hearts, unquote. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. And now let's get on with the show. So at the beginning of the audio commentary, Paul Thomas Anderson says, quote, hey, roll it, because I'll tell you, you're listening to a guy who learned a lot about ripping off movies from watching Laserdisc with director commentaries, unquote. So also, which, Joseph Darlington talked about, if you've seen Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas, you no doubt remember the sequence where Henry Hill and his girlfriend Karen entered the Copacabana to the tune of the Crystals' Then He Kissed Me, all in one unbroken shot. Allegedly, PTA wanted to flex his filmmaking muscles by opening his film with his own long take, while Scorsese's unbroken shot actually lasts about 10 seconds longer, 3 minutes and 3 seconds versus 2 minutes 53 seconds. Anderson's long take employs a crane shot into a Steadicam tracking shot that first follows Louis Guzman's Maurice Rodriguez into Hot Tracks before shifting focus to Jack and Amber, then Roller Girl, and finishing with Eddie Adams, who of course would become Dirk Diggler. So it's very cool. And the longest tracking shot that I love, but also you're kind of like, oof, is Martin Scorsese, is Brian De Palma's Snake Eyes. The beginning, I think it's the opening shot of Snake Eyes, just follows him going through a casino, down an escalator, like following Nick Cage. Very cool. Anyway, I think that one lasts 13 minutes. I think that I had it timed and my friend made fun of me because I was timing it. Anyway, in 1977, high school dropout Eddie Adams is living with his father and emotionally abusive mother in Torrance, California. He works at a Reseda nightclub owned by Maurice Rodriguez, where he meets porn filmmaker Jack Horner. So that's like how they started, which is fine. But when it cuts to Buck, and he's selling selling the radios and stereos and stuff. And he says 2K421, like a stereo system. TK421 is really cool. Like, I was like, oh my God, that's from Star Wars. That's where George Lucas got the name, TK421, why aren't you at your post? Like, holy shit. And you're just like, oh, that's awesome. So great. Interested in bringing Eddie into porn, Jack auditions him by watching him have sex with Roller Girl, a porn starlet who always wears skates. She's like, I never take them off. He's like, okay. After a fight with his mother, Adams moves in with Horner at his San Fernando Valley home. So that fight with his mother is so good because it's kind of the other one that he did, Punch Drunk Love. That was a good one. I just remembered a PTA movie. That was after Magnolia. I really liked it because he was kind of like my character, Adam, that guy. Very cool. And I was just like, oh my God, that's how I act. And in this movie, when he's fighting with his mother and he's kind of crying, he's 17 years old and his mom's basically telling him that he's stupid and he's dating a whore, and he starts crying because he's so angry. And that's how Adam Sandler, that's the name I was trying to think of. That's how Adam Sandler does. Adam Sandler's like crying when he's talking to his sisters on the phone on Punch Drunk Love. Oh, so good. Anyway, so that mother, like the mother's just mean, but also like the father's like cuckolded and just like in his own world and doesn't want to even fight, and just sits there while she yells at him, and basically he's like, I'm never going to see you again, and he leaves. Adams gives himself the screen name Dirk Diggler and becomes a star because of his good looks, youthful charisma, and unusually large penis. His success allows him to buy a new house, an extensive wardrobe, and a competition orange 1977 Chevy Corvette. So what's cool here that you notice, like any 17-year-old, but also a guy chasing his dreams, in his room you see like all the posters of Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon, just a montage of Bruce Lee, like a picture of all Bruce Lee pictures. Farrah Fawcett, that Corvette is up there. There's a poster of the Corvette that he always wanted, like, and all those things in there. He's doing karate when he does things, and when he's in that movie later, the Brock movies that he does, he's doing karate. So it's kind of like showing how that's all going to come to fruition in a way, but that was just me, of course, looking into it. With his friend and co-star Reed Rothschild, Dirk pitches a series of successful action-themed porn films. Those are the one I was talking about. What's cool with him and Reed Rothschild is the way Reed Rothschild's trying to one-up Dirk Diggler. Whenever he's like, how much do you bench? How much do you curl? Da-da-da. And he's like, I don't know, this. And he's like, oh, I do this many. And it's so great. It's just funny. Just a good, feel-good film in the beginning. He works and socializes with others from the porn industry, and they live carefree lifestyles in the late 1970s disco era. While attending a New Year's Eve party at Horner's house on December 31st, 1979, assistant director Little Bill Thompson, that's William H. Macy, discovers his adulterous wife having sex with another man. So she'd done that before, and he just like walked out of the room. She was like, close the door. That guy was like, close the door. Like, come on. And it was like, Jesus Christ. Bill, tired of being repeatedly cuckolded, shoots the pair dead and commits suicide. So the first time he screened Boogie Nights for an audience, Anderson remembers cheers coming from the scene where William H. Macy's Little Bill finds his wife having sex with another man on New Year's Eve and proceeds to shoot them both dead. He immediately felt like he had done something wrong with the film, as this wasn't the response he wanted to elicit. His friend, singer-songwriter Amy Mann, was sitting next to him at the time, and she took his hand and told him it wasn't his fault. Once Little Bill shoots himself in the film, the audience went quiet, and they weren't, quote, and they weren't laughing, and they weren't cheering, and it was dead silence. And I thought, okay, good. I've done my job okay. It's them that's fucked up, he says. So I could imagine that. Like, you're like, oh, this is going to play like holy shit. And then it doesn't until he shoots himself. And then everybody's like, oh shit. And they said this is when the film starts turning dark, starting to get like, whoa. Dirk and Reed begin using cocaine on a regular basis. Due to his drug use, Dirk finds it increasingly difficult to achieve an erection, falls into violent mood swings, and becomes irritated with Johnny Doe, a rival leading man Jack has recently recruited. Dirk worries that Johnny is displacing him. In 1983, after arguing with Jack, Dirk is fired and takes off with Reed to start a music career along with Scotty, a boom operator who is in love with Dirk. And that was a good scene too. New Year's Eve, he's like, you want to come and see my car? He shows him the car. he can't afford a Corvette, but he's got a car that's like his. Like, he's trying to be Dirk Diggler. And he's just like so in love. And then he gives him that kiss. And Dirk Diggler, and they do it well, where Dirk Diggler doesn't admonish him and be angry and like dismiss him and call him gay or just hurt his feelings. He's just like, dude, like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm sorry, I love you. And he's like, I understand, just dude, chill out. And you're like, wow, that was really done well. I like it. Of course, so, and then here's a little fact. Of course, they record The Touch that was originally recorded by Stan Bush for the 1986 film Transformers the Movie. In case you didn't know that, you might have been like, that song sounds familiar. It's because it's The Touch. You got the touch. Anyway, Jack rejects business overtures from Floyd Gondoli, a theater magnate who insists on cutting costs by shooting on videotape because Jack believes that video will diminish the quality of his film, which is true. They've talked about it, like, and other things, my research for this and stuff, is now everybody's going to just fast forward to the action. They're not going to watch a whole scene play out. They're just going to go from sex scene to sex scene. And now it's become, Pornhub, all these YouPorn, whatever. And people just watch the scenes and they don't watch the storytelling of it anymore. Maybe some people do, but I don't. I think that's all gone away from the 70s. But anyway, after his friend and financier Colonel James is incarcerated for causing an underage girl to overdose on cocaine, along with possession of child pornography, Jack cooperates with Gondoli, but becomes disillusioned with the work he is expected to churn out. One of these projects involves Jack and Roller Girl riding in a limousine, searching for random men for her to have sex with while being taped by a crew. After they pick up a man, he recognizes Roller Girl as a former high school classmate. After a failed attempt at intercourse, he insults her and Jack. Both Jack and Roller Girl attack the man, leaving him bloodied on the sidewalk. So there's that thing when, when Jack is talking to Eddie and Dirk, whatever, he's saying like, well, I want to make a film. I want to make a great film. And then when Dirk Diggler comes to him and is like, look, me and Reed had this idea for this detective thing and we'll do it. And unlike Johnny Wad, the John Holmes movies, we won't be abusive to the women and it'll be good and we'll do it right. And we'll make it better. And then when Jack's watching one of them edited, Jack's like, oh, wow. Like, I think this is one of my best works, which is very cool. But then, yeah, this takes a sad turn. It's the look on Heather Graham's face when she's like, when that guy's like, do you know, Brandy? And she's like, no. And he's like, you don't know, your name's not Brandy. And she's like, no. And then when she kind of looks at the camera like, help me. And you feel for her because she's defenseless. And what was kind of fun was now not fun. And it just took a wrong turn. And then when he's like, Jack, your work sucks. When he tells Jack Horner his work sucks now, and Jack just gets out and starts beating the fuck out of him. My wife's like, yeah, she was clapping. Leading Lady Amber Waves lands in a custody battle with her ex-husband. The court determines that she is an unfit mother due to her involvement in the porn industry, criminal record, and cocaine addiction. So that part, she does really well. I remember watching this for the first time, and outside court, she just burst into tears. And she's just crying, and they're just holding on it. And I was like, wow, that's really good. Julianne Moore is always great. But, yeah, it was great. And then this was good where she's kind of being proper and being right until that judge says, when was the last time you were arrested? And then it cuts to her crying, and you're like, oh, shit. So, but also that she doesn't even realize that she's on a downward slope doing drugs and all this stuff and just, kind of thinking she's doing right. And when she's like, my son was never, exposed to that. And the guy was like, I walked in and I saw it. Her ex-husband says that. And she's like, and has nothing to say. Buck Swope marries fellow porn star Jesse St. Vincent, who becomes pregnant. Because of his past as a pornographer, Buck is disqualified from a bank loan and cannot open his own stereo equipment store. That night, he finds himself in the middle of a holdup at a donut shop in which the clerk, the robber, and an unarmed customer are killed. So my wife first was like, why rob a donut store? Hello? Like, go rob something else. Like, a donut store is not going to have money. And then they're like, open the safe. And I'm like, see, told him to open the safe. He's got money. And I'm like, plus it's at night. Maybe it was a big busy day that he's been watching. But it's really interesting because right before this was, you got the scene with Heather Graham, with Roller Girl, being kind of, verbally abused by that guy. And then you got them beating him up. And during that, you have Dirk Diggler, who has become kind of a hustler, and he gets in the truck with that guy. And that guy's like, look, just jerk it and I'll watch you and I'll pay you like $10. And then he's like, let me see the money. And he's like, I don't have the money. And he's like, all I have is $5. And so he's like, all right. Or maybe cost 20. All I have is 10. So he goes to do it. And then all of a sudden he can't get it up. And he's like, I'm sorry. And then all of a sudden this truck pulls up with these three or four like guys with bats and shit. And they want to beat up, a homosexual. And they pull him out of the truck and they beat him up and they kick him and stuff, and then they leave. And now you got Dirk Diggler just being like, wow, he's at the bottom of his, almost the bottom, which you would think that would be the total bottom, but no. So then it cuts to the donut shop, and, Buck's still being happy. He's got a baby coming. He's like, here's what I'll take. And, give me this, give me the crawler, give me this. And then that guy comes in to rob the store, and he sees the customer going for his gun. Buck does. And Buck's like, don't do it. And that guy, and the robber's like, shut the fuck up. And he's like, don't do it. And that guy pulls his gun out, shoots the robber. The robber then ends up like shooting as he falls, and he ends up shooting the customer. And as the customer's dying, he shoots a couple times and kills the donut clerk. So now it's just Buck by himself with the money. So Buck is the sole survivor and escapes with the money. Having wasted their money on drugs, Dirk and Reed cannot pay a recording studio for demo tapes they believe will enable them to become music stars. So that part's funny too, where they're like, all you gotta do is just release the tapes. Like, we're fucking musicians. It's like that whole drug, alcohol, like whole addiction thing of just like thinking you're better than you are, and like, oh my God. Desperate for money, Dirk resorts to prostitution. Oh, I thought this happened. I think they anyway. Resorts to prostitution, but is assaulted and robbed by 3 men. Dirk, Reed, and their friend Todd Parker attempt to scam local drug dealer Rahad Jackson by selling him a half kilo of baking soda disguised as cocaine. Dirk and Reed want to leave quickly before Rahad's bodyguard inspects it, but Todd attempts to steal more drugs and money from Rahad. So this scene, I love this scene. I've always loved this scene. The firecrackers are going off. They're just like, dude, he's got a gun. The bodyguard's got a gun. He's gonna fucking do it. Reminds you in a way of True Romance, but not, because it's more intense. And he's like, he's got a gun. And he's checking the coke, and they know he's gonna find out. And they're like, we need to fucking go. And all of a sudden, he's like, no, I want the money in the fucking safe. And you're like, oh shit. And like, so good. And then, and of course, fucking Alfred Molina, always great. So here's a fact. Anderson's father, Ernie, created a character named Goulardi for a Cleveland TV show on which he'd sometimes set off fireworks on air. The firecracker scene was also inspired by Robert Downey Sr.'s 1969 film, Putney Swope. So speaking of Robert Downey Sr., he was the guy that owned the music studio where he told them that they had to pay money, and they start to attack him. That's Robert Downey Jr.'s father, Robert Downey Sr., rest in peace, director. Quote, if you watch Putney Swope, there's a wonderful piece of background action where a character throws a firecracker off in a scene and everyone turns around and looks, Anderson told Creative Screenwriting. Quote, I called up Robert Downey Sr. and I said, you have a great piece of background action that I want to take and make a piece of foreground action. He said, great, be my guest, unquote. So that's cool, where he wasn't like, well, it's mine. He's just like, go for it. In the ensuing gunfight, Todd kills Rahad's bodyguard and is killed by Rahad. While Dirk killed by Rahad. So yeah, that part's cool when he's like, Rahad runs into the bedroom and he had a 6-shooter, had a revolver. And when Todd kicks open the door, he just gets blown right back out because Rahad's got a shotgun. So, very cool. While Dirk and Reed narrowly escape, Dirk goes back to Jack's home and they reconcile. So, one of the high points in the film comes, like I said, when Diggler, Reed Rothschild, and Todd Parker attempt to pull off a bait-and-switch scam with drug lord madman Rahad Jackson, played by Alfred Molina. The scene is brimming with tension as Diggler and crew attempt to sell Jackson some fake cocaine. What you may not know is that the sequence is based in part on a real-life robbery and home invasion and the subsequent retaliation, the Wonderland murders. In 1981, porn star John Holmes, whom Diggler was partially based on, was allegedly involved in a home invasion of Nash's residence, in which Nash's bodyguard, Gregory Dials, was shot and injured. Nash, Dials, and Holmes were then apparently involved in a bloody attempt to recover Nash's property from the Wonderland gang house, which resulted in 4 brutal murders. So, I wrote here also, if you are curious about that, check out the movie Wonderland with Val Kilmer. So basically, they have no proof that John Holmes was there. They found a handprint on a bloody handprint on one of the headboards, on a head railing of one of the bedrooms where somebody was beaten to death, one of the 4. And he says he didn't do it. They were saying maybe he's high on drugs and they went in there to kill all these people and that's what happened. But he was never accused of it. I mean, he was never tried for it, but they suspect him. But Wonderland's cool because it's one of those what ifs, you figured out. So it's very cool. In 1984, Jessie gives birth to her and Buck's son. Amber shoots a television commercial for the opening of Buck's store. Reed performs a magic act at a strip club. Colonel James remains in prison. Maurice opens a nightclub, and Roller Girl takes a GED class. Dirk and Amber prepare to start filming again. So PTA's erotic epic ends with a cleaned-up Dirk Diggler getting a second chance in the adult film industry. As Diggler is preparing to shoot a scene, he sits in front of his dressing room mirror, psyching himself up and getting into character. The scene is a direct homage to the final scene in Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull, itself a homage to Marlon Brando's iconic speech in On the Waterfront, in which aging boxer Jake LaMotta prepares to go on stage for his one-man show. The dialogue may be different, but it is a near exact replication of the scene. The end. So, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was going to be a 5, but we'll get to that in a minute. So the things I have here, my question usually is, what is, if anything, something in this movie that sticks with you? And I would say it's that firecracker scene. It's Sister Christian. It's Dirk Diggler. It's like that scene with Julianne Moore, like his first sex scene that he's filming that he's nervous about. It's her crying in the court, outside the courtroom. So there's so many pieces in it. It's the thing with William H. Macy finding his wife a couple times, having sex. It's one of those where when I watch this, I was like, I want to write something like kind of epic like this. Like Paul Thomas Anderson's thing was like, I want to make a 3-hour movie and I want to make it NC-17. And they were like, no, you can't. He's like, it's already not mainstream, so fuck it. Let's make it NC-17. And they were like, no, we can't. So they ended up 20 minutes short of, 3 hours, and also ended up rated R. But yeah, it's interesting though. But he got a lot of the stuff he wanted, and I also remember a lot of these long shots. And I was going to be directing at this time. I was writing and thinking of directing and working on some things, and I was like, oh, that like one long take, like I was so into camera moves, and I still am, like all this great stuff. But anyway, reviews. Rotten Tomatoes critical consensus reads, quote, grounded in strong characters, bold themes, and subtle storytelling, Boogie Nights is a groundbreaking film both to director P.T. Anderson and star Mark Wahlberg, unquote. Sorry about that. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times observed, few films have been more matter-of-fact, even disenchanted, about sexuality. Adult films are a business here, not a dalliance or a pastime. And one of the charms of Boogie Nights is the way it shows the everyday backstage humdrum life of porno filmmaking. The sweep and variety of the characters have brought the movie comparisons to Robert Altman's Nashville and The Player. There is also some of the same appeal as Pulp Fiction in scenes that balance precariously between comedy and violence. Through all the characters and all the action, Anderson's screenplay centers on the human qualities of the players. Boogie Nights has a quality of many great films in that it always seems alive. So when the website Movie Hole asked Anderson if he'd consider doing a sequel to Boogie Nights, Anderson said no. But quote, I wonder how many of these characters would even still be alive. He pondered. Quote, probably a few of them, but I fear that most of them might be dead. I doubt Dirk Diggler's still alive. He'd be probably gone. I couldn't see him making it. I can see Burt Reynolds' character Jack Horner still going on, though. So I give this movie 4 out of 5 celluloid hearts. And it's great. Like all the characters, it's great character building. It's great. But there was something about this viewing where it didn't hit me as much as it did before. I can't even think of it now. I think not Memento, fucking the third film of his. I think Magnolia would still hold up, but I'm not sure. But maybe I'll have to visit again. I'll let you know. But right now, I was gonna give it 3.5. I moved it up to 4, so I'm dancing on it. Maybe 4.5, but I understand Brandt's 5, but really got to look. But it's definitely quality work. It's a good writer. I believe a good director who found his way later to be like, here's my own thing. So yeah, I love it. So Phil's favorite of this week is, I think I'm going to say, I didn't watch a lot, but me and the wife watched that new Pinocchio from 2022 on Disney Plus. And I was like, okay, and we're watching it. She was like, let's watch it. And it was great. I didn't even realize that it was Robert Zemeckis. Through it, I was like, this seems like a Robert Zemeckis film. And then sure as shit, at the end, directed by Robert Zemeckis. Holy shit. But at the end, my wife started clapping, and I clapped too. And I'm like, oh, cool. Chip, I was talking to Chip earlier. He couldn't be on the show because he is on a big vacation, but we talked earlier. But he said he was heard that people are saying like it's exactly like the original, and the original is a classic, and you don't need to redo the classic. And I told him, well, the thing is, like, when they did Mulan, people got upset because there was no singing. When they did Lion King, people didn't like it because it didn't look good in the CGI, and maybe it was too much like the original, whatever, and no singing or whatever. Timon and Pumbaa weren't talking. And then, or whatever it was. I haven't watched that one. But I told him, I go, yeah, but Beauty and the Beast is great. What was the other one? Aladdin, that remake of Aladdin was good. So I like this one. I gave it 4 hearts, Pinocchio. And I know now you're going, wait, you gave Boogie Nights 4 hearts and you give Pinocchio 4 hearts? Look, it was good. It had everything in it. It made me laugh. It was sweet. It had sweet stuff going on. But anyway, I know this is a shorter show. When I'm by myself, I figured let's make it faster. I got nobody to go back and forth with, but I can give you guys some facts, which I did. So, Chip will be back next week, though. So come back on September 23rd for...
Hi, my name is Mike Myers. Perhaps you recognize me from my recent motion picture, Wayne's World. Thanks. As you can see, I'm on the set of my new film in which I play a young fellow named Charlie, who gets a little more than he bargained for. For example, there's suspense. Have you heard of this case? Mrs. X. She murders her husband on her honeymoon, then she changes her identity and marries again.
I never heard of it, so what?
I think I'm dating Mrs. X.
The Justice Department reports an alarming rise in the number of poisoning murders across the United States.
It's a smart drink to improve your brain power. You like it, Charlie?
Thank you, no. There's action.
Charlie, there's something I've been meaning to tell you.
She's a killer.
Charlie, she is not a killer.
And of course, there's plenty of romance.
What do you look for in a girl you date?
I know everyone always says sense of humor, but I'd really have to go with breast size.
You're lying on your side, totally asleep. You could just stick a needle in.
So, as you can see, it has all the elements of a truly great motion picture. Oh, did I mention the axe murder?
Hello, sweetheart.
Missed me, darling?
That's right, from 1993, it's So I Married an Axe Murderer. One of Chip's favorites, one that reminds me of Chip, the character that Mike Myers plays, his comedy, and probably just Mike Myers in general comedy kind of reminds me of Chip. Like I said, I've known him all his life, so that's 49 years now that he's, 48. Yeah, 48 years, sorry. He just had a birthday, so happy birthday on the 8th. Anyway, certain movies stick with you. They stay in your head and heart forever. So from all of us at My Cellular Heart, keep watching movies and check out So I Married an Axe Murderer on Hulu. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.